The October sun was beginning its descent behind the red rocks of Sedona, painting the sky in layers of burnt orange and deep violet. Elena Morales gripped the steering wheel of her old Subaru as she navigated the winding descent of Schnebly Hill Road, a route she'd driven countless times but never quite trusted. The unpaved sections were treacherous, especially as twilight approached and shadows stretched across the canyon walls like fingers reaching for the valley below. She'd spent the afternoon photographing the aspens near the summit, their golden leaves trembling in the October breeze, a brief moment of color before the desert winter stripped them bare. Photography had become her sanctuary in the 2 years since her divorce, a way to find beauty in solitude. Her ex-husband Marcus had taken the house in Phoenix, the friends, even the dog. Elena had taken her camera and a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Sedona, where the rent was cheaper and the tourists fewer. The road curved sharply, and Elena eased off the gas, her headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. That's when she saw it. A dark sedan parked at an awkward angle on the shoulder, its hood up, emergency lights blinking weakly against the approaching night. A figure stood beside it, silhouetted against the deepening sky. Elena's first instinct was to keep driving. This was Arizona, and Schnebly Hill Road wasn't exactly known for its cell reception or helpful passers-by. But something made her slow down. Maybe the memory of her own car breaking down on I-17 last winter, when 3 people had driven past before someone finally stopped. Maybe it was the way the figure didn't wave frantically or step into the road, but simply stood there with an almost resigned stillness. She pulled over 20 feet ahead of the disabled car and left her engine running, rolling down the window halfway. The figure approached slowly, and as he stepped into the beam of her headlights, Elena felt an odd sensation ripple through her chest. Not fear exactly, but a kind of recognition that had no logical source. He was tall, probably in his early 40s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes that seemed to catch the last of the daylight in an unusual way. Amber, or perhaps light brown, difficult to tell in the dimness. His clothes were unremarkable: dark jeans, a grey Henley, a canvas jacket that had seen better days. But it was his expression that unsettled her, not desperate or relieved, but calm, deeply, unnervingly calm. "Car trouble?" Elena asked, her voice sounding too loud in the quiet evening. "You could say that." His voice was low, unhurried. "Battery's completely dead. Phone too. I've been here about an hour." He said it without complaint, as though waiting on a deserted mountain road as darkness fell was merely an inconvenience. "Do you need a jump?" Elena glanced at his car, an older model sedan that looked well-maintained despite its current predicament. "I don't think that'll help." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "But I'd appreciate a ride into town, if you're heading that way. There's a mechanic on Dry Creek Road I can call once I'm somewhere with reception." Elena hesitated. Every practical part of her brain screamed that this was how horror movies started: lone woman, deserted road, mysterious stranger. But there was something about him that didn't trigger her usual alarm bells. Maybe it was the way he kept a respectful distance from her car, or the absence of any urgency in his demeanor, or the strange, inexplicable feeling that she'd seen those eyes before, though she knew she hadn't. "Get in," she heard herself say. "I'm heading back to Sedona anyway." He nodded once, as though he'd expected this response, and walked around to the passenger side. As he settled into the seat beside her, Elena caught the scent of sage and something else. Cedar, maybe, or juniper. It reminded her of the high desert after rain, clean and ancient. "I'm Adrian," he said, fastening his seatbelt. "Elena." She put the car in drive and eased back onto the road, hyper-aware of his presence in the small space. The Subaru's interior suddenly felt intimate in a way it never had before. They drove in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the crunch of gravel beneath the tires and the soft hum of the engine. Elena kept her eyes on the road, but she could feel him looking at her, not staring, but observing with a kind of careful attention that made her skin prickle with awareness. "Thank you," he said finally, and there was something in those two words that carried more weight than simple gratitude. It felt like an acknowledgement of something larger, though Elena couldn't have explained what. "It's fine. I couldn't just leave you out here." She glanced at him briefly, then back at the road. "Where are you from? I don't think I've seen you around Sedona." "I've been traveling," Adrian said, which wasn't really an answer. "Moving between places. I came here looking for something." "Did you find it?" Elena asked, negotiating a particularly rough patch where recent rains had carved deep channels in the dirt. Adrian was quiet for a moment, and when Elena risked another glance at him, she found him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between wonder and sadness, between recognition and loss. "I think I might have," he said softly. The statement hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Elena felt that odd sensation in her chest again, like a string being plucked deep inside her ribcage. She focused on driving, on the familiar landmarks sliding past in the growing darkness, the jutting rock formation locals called the Coffee Pot, the turn-off to Bear Mountain Trail, the first scattered lights of West Sedona glowing in the valley below. "What brings you to Sedona?" Adrian asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice, not just polite conversation. "I live here. Well, for 2 years now. I moved from Phoenix after my marriage ended." Elena surprised herself with the honesty. She wasn't usually one to share personal details with strangers. "I needed a fresh start, I guess, somewhere I could breathe." "And can you? Breathe here?" Elena considered the question, which was more profound than it seemed. "Most days. The red rocks help, the space. It's easier to remember who I am when I'm not drowning in who I used to be." Adrian nodded slowly, as though she'd said something deeply important. "That makes sense. Sometimes we need to shed old versions of ourselves before we can recognize what's been waiting underneath." The way he said it made Elena feel like he understood something about her that she'd never put into words. They were descending into town now, the paved section of Schnebley Hill Road smoothing out beneath them, streetlights beginning to appear at regular intervals. "Where should I drop you?" Elena asked, as they approached the main intersection near Tlaquepaque Arts Village. "Anywhere along 89A is fine. I can walk from there." Adrian shifted slightly in his seat, and Elena had the distinct impression he wasn't eager for the ride to end. She pulled into a well-lit parking lot beside a closed art gallery, putting the car in park, but not turning off the engine. In the glow of the dashboard, Adrian's face was clearer now. Strong features, a mouth that looked like it didn't smile often, but could transform his entire face when it did, and those unusual eyes that seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom. "Thank you, Elena," he said again, and this time he extended his hand across the console. She took it, expecting a brief handshake, but when their palms touched, something electric passed between them. It wasn't attraction exactly, or not only that. It was more like the sensation of two puzzle pieces sliding into place, of something incomplete suddenly finding its missing component. Adrian's fingers tightened around hers for just a moment, and his eyes widened slightly, as though he'd felt it too. "You're welcome," Elena managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw something flicker across his face. Conflict, perhaps, or a decision being made. Then he released her hand and opened the door, letting the cool October air rush into the car. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Elena said, though she wasn't sure why. Adrian paused halfway out of the car, looking back at her over his shoulder. "I think I already have. The question is what I'm supposed to do about it." He gave her a small, enigmatic smile. "Good night, Elena. I have a feeling we'll see each other again." Then he was gone, walking away into the soft darkness of the Sedona evening, his figure disappearing between pools of streetlight. Elena sat in her idling car for several minutes, her hand still tingling where he'd touched it. that strange sensation in her chest, now spreading through her entire body like warm honey. She drove home slowly, taking the long way through town, past the upscale shops and galleries that catered to tourists, past the healing centers and crystal shops that had made Sedona famous among spiritual seekers. Her apartment was in a modest complex on the edge of town, where the land began its gradual transition from red rock to high desert scrub. It wasn't much: a small living room, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, a bedroom with a view of distant cliffs, but it was hers, bought with the divorce settlement and her salary as a freelance photographer. Inside, Elena poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the dark silhouettes of the rocks against the star-filled sky. Sedona was famous for its night sky, far enough from major cities to offer a view of the Milky Way that took her breath away every time she bothered to look up. Tonight, though, she wasn't thinking about stars. She was thinking about amber eyes and a voice that felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain, about a hand touching hers and the sensation that something had shifted in her world, like a door opening that she hadn't known was closed. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos she'd taken that afternoon. Aspens against blue sky, a raven perched on a twisted juniper, the play of light and shadow across Cathedral Rock in the distance. Good shots, technically perfect, but somehow flat. She'd been chasing beauty for 2 years, capturing it through a lens, but never quite feeling it in her bones the way she had when she was younger. When had she stopped feeling things deeply? When had she started going through the motions of living without actually being alive? Elena set down her phone and pressed her palm against the window glass, feeling its coolness against her skin. Somewhere out there in the darkness, Adrian was doing... what? Finding a hotel, calling a tow truck, walking the quiet streets with that unsettling calm, as though he had all the time in the world. She didn't even know his last name. Probably wouldn't see him again, despite his cryptic parting words. Sedona attracted wanderers and seekers, people passing through in search of healing or enlightenment or whatever they thought the Red Rocks could give them. He'd move on, and this would become just another story. The time she picked up a stranger on Schnebley Hill Road and felt something indefinable pass between them. But as Eleanor finally turned away from the window and prepared for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been set in motion tonight, something that had been waiting a very long time to begin. And when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of light, pure golden light that wrapped around her like a blanket, warm and safe and achingly familiar, though she couldn't remember ever having experienced anything like it before. The following days unfolded with an unusual quality, as though Eleanor were moving through water instead of air. Everything felt slightly off-kilter, like the world had tilted a few degrees on its axis, and she was the only one who noticed. She went through her usual routines: morning coffee on her small balcony, hours spent editing photos at her laptop, afternoon walks along the trails near her apartment, but nothing felt quite real. Or rather, everything felt too real, hyper-aware and vivid in a way that was almost painful. On Wednesday morning, she woke with the strange conviction that she needed to drive to Chapel of the Holy Cross, a small Catholic chapel built into the Red Rocks south of town. Elena wasn't religious and rarely visited the chapel, despite its architectural beauty and stunning views. But the urge was so strong that she found herself getting dressed and heading out before she'd even finished her first cup of coffee. The chapel clung to the rock face like a bird's nest, accessible by a winding road that switchbacked up the hillside. Elena parked in the small lot and made her way up the stairs, passing tourists with cameras and a few contemplative visitors sitting in the pews inside. She didn't go in. Instead, she walked to the edge of the overlook, where a low wall prevented visitors from getting too close to the drop-off. The view was spectacular. The Verde Valley spread out below like a patchwork quilt in shades of green and brown, the red rocks rising all around in their ancient, inscrutable formations. Bell Rock gleamed in the morning sun, and beyond it, the distant peaks of the Mogollon Rim created a hazy blue line on the horizon. Elena stood there for a long time, letting the wind tangle her dark hair, feeling the October sun warm on her face. She didn't know why she'd come here, what she was looking for, but as she stood there, she felt that familiar sensation again, the warm pressure at her shoulder like an invisible hand resting there in comfort or encouragement. Beautiful, isn't it? Eleanor turned sharply, her heart jumping into her throat. Adrian stood a few feet away, hands in the pockets of his jacket, looking not at the view but at her. He wore the same clothes as the night she'd picked him up, and his hair was slightly wind-ruffled, but otherwise he looked exactly the same. Calm, present, and somehow inevitable. "What are you doing here?" Elena asked, though the question came out less accusatory than she'd intended. She wasn't frightened, which surprised her. If anything, she felt a strange sense of rightness at his appearance, as though she'd been expecting him without realizing it. "Same thing you are, I suspect," Adrian said, moving to stand beside her at the wall. "Following an impulse I don't entirely understand." He glanced at her, and in the bright morning light his eyes were even more striking, definitely amber, with flecks of gold that caught the sun. "I've been staying at a motel near the airport. Woke up this morning with the feeling I needed to come here, and then—" He gestured vaguely at her. "Here you are." "That's—" Elena trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. Crazy? Impossible? Exactly what had been happening to her all week. "I felt the same way. Like I had to come here." They stood in silence for a moment, both looking out at the valley. The wind carried the scent of juniper and dust, and somewhere below a raven called, its harsh cry echoing off the rocks. "This is going to sound strange," Adrian said slowly, "but have you been having unusual experiences since we met? Feelings of déjà vu, or being drawn to places you wouldn't normally go?" Elena's breath caught. "Yes. How did you know?" "Because I've been experiencing the same thing." Adrian turned to face her fully now, his expression serious. "Elena, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you decide I'm insane." "Okay," Elena said, though her pulse had begun to race. Part of her wanted to walk away, to get in her car and drive back to the safety of her apartment and her ordinary life. But a larger part, the part that had been waking her in the middle of the night with that warm, golden sensation, needed to hear what he had to say. Adrian took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I came to Sedona because I've been searching for someone, not a specific person. I didn't know who or even what they'd look like. But I've had this sense for as long as I can remember that I owed someone something, a debt that needed to be repaid. Except I had no memory of what it was, or who I owed it to." He paused, gauging her reaction. Elena said nothing, waiting. "About 6 months ago, the feeling got stronger. I was living in Colorado, working as a wilderness guide, and I started having these dreams. In them, I was somewhere else. I don't mean geographically, I mean existentially. Another time, maybe, or another version of reality. And in these dreams, someone helped me, saved me, actually. I could never see their face clearly, but I knew it was real. I knew that on some level that transcended this life, this existence, someone had done something for me that changed everything." Adrian's voice was steady, but Eleanor could hear the emotion beneath it, a kind of desperate hope that she would understand, that she wouldn't dismiss him as delusional. "The dreams led me here," he continued, "to Sedona. I've been here for 3 weeks, driving around, hiking the trails, waiting for something, and then my car broke down on Schnebly Hill Road, and you stopped. And the moment I saw you, Elena, I knew. You're the one I've been searching for." Elena's mind was racing, trying to process what he was saying while simultaneously fighting against the part of her that wanted to believe him. "You think we knew each other in another life? Is that what you're saying?" "I think it's deeper than that," Adrian said quietly. "I think you did something for me, something so profound that it created a debt that transcended death. And I think I've been carrying that debt my entire life, trying to find a way to repay it. "This is crazy," Elena whispered, but even as she said it, she felt something deep inside her respond to his words, a resonance that couldn't be ignored. People don't get reincarnated to repay karmic debts. That's not how the world works. "Isn't it?" Adrian asked gently. "How do you explain what you've been feeling? The pull to certain places, the sense of something familiar about me, the warmth you feel. Yes, I know about that too because I feel it whenever I think about you. How do you explain any of that?" Elena had no answer. She turned back to the view, gripping the low wall with both hands, as though it were the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become liquid and uncertain. Below, tourists moved like ants along the trails, oblivious to the conversation happening above them, to the impossible claims being made in the shadow of a chapel built to honor divine mysteries. "What did I do?" Elena asked finally, her voice barely audible. "In this other life, or whatever it was. What did I do that created this debt?" "I don't know the specifics," Adrian admitted. "I only have fragments, impressions. But I think you gave me light when I was in darkness. You offered help when I had nothing left. And somehow, that act of kindness created a bond between our souls that couldn't be broken, even by death." Elena closed her eyes, and suddenly she was somewhere else. Not a memory exactly, but something like it. She saw darkness, absolute and suffocating, and a figure huddled in it, lost and afraid. And she saw herself, or someone who was her but not her, reaching out, offering a hand, offering light. The sensation was so vivid that she gasped, her eyes flying open. "You felt it, didn't you?" Adrian said, and there was wonder in his voice. "It's starting to come back." "I don't know what I felt," Elena said, though that was a lie. She knew exactly what she'd felt, the truth of his words resonating in every cell of her body. "This is too much. I need time to think." "Of course." Adrian stepped back, giving her space. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you, but I needed you to know why I'm here, why I can't seem to leave Sedona. It's not just you I'm drawn to. It's the debt I need to repay, the light I need to return." "What does that even mean?" Elena asked, frustrated. "How do you repay someone for something you can't remember in a life you don't recall? This is impossible." "Maybe," Adrian said. "Or maybe that's the journey we're supposed to take together. To remember, to understand, and to finally close the circle that's been open between us for however long it's been." Elena looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw not just the handsome stranger who'd needed help on a mountain road, but something older, something that recognized her just as deeply as she was beginning to recognize him. It terrified her. It thrilled her. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind at her back, knowing that one more step would mean either falling or flying. "I need to go," she said abruptly, stepping away from the wall. "I need to think about all of this." "I understand." Adrian pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket and held it out to her. "This is where I'm staying. If you want to talk, or if you want to try to figure this out together, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere until..." "Until what?" "Until the debt is paid," Adrian said simply. "Until the light is returned." Elena took the paper without looking at it and walked quickly back to her car, her heart pounding, her thoughts in chaos. She didn't look back, though she could feel his eyes on her the entire way. It wasn't until she was halfway home, her hands shaking on the steering wheel, that she realized she'd been holding her breath. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the desert night, the distant call of a coyote, the rustle of wind through the junipers, the settling of the building around her. And she felt it again, that warm presence at her shoulder, stronger now, like someone standing beside her bed in the darkness. She wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt a profound sense of longing, as though she'd been separated from something essential and was only now beginning to understand what she'd lost. On impulse, she got out of bed and went to her laptop, opening her photo archives. She scrolled back through years of images, her wedding, the house in Phoenix, trips to California and New Mexico, all the captured moments of a life that had seemed complete at the time. But as she looked at them now, she realized they were all technically perfect and emotionally empty. She'd been going through the motions even then, performing the role of happy wife, successful photographer, woman with her life together. None of it had been real. None of it had touched whatever was essential in her. Elena closed the laptop and pulled out her journal, something she hadn't written in since the divorce. By the light of a single lamp, she began to write. Not coherent thoughts, but fragments, impressions, the strange sensations she'd been experiencing all week. And as she wrote, she began to understand something that Adrian had been trying to tell her. Whatever was happening between them wasn't about romance or attraction, though those elements were present. It was about something much older and more fundamental. Two souls recognizing each other across the vast distances of time and mortality, drawn together by a debt that transcended understanding. The question was whether she had the courage to explore it, or whether she'd run back to the safety of her small, controlled life and let this chance slip away like so many others had before. Elena didn't contact Adrian for 5 days. She threw herself into work, taking on a last-minute assignment, photographing a destination wedding at L'Auberge de Sedona, spending 12 hours capturing the carefully curated happiness of strangers. She hiked Devil's Bridge at dawn and Boynton Canyon at sunset, pushing her body until exhaustion drowned out the constant pull she felt toward the slip of paper with Adrian's motel information that she'd tucked into her bedside drawer. But the dreams wouldn't let her rest. Every night she found herself in that same place, darkness absolute and terrifying, a void that felt both external and internal. And every night she watched herself extend a hand, offer light, make a choice that somehow altered the fundamental trajectory of a soul that wasn't yet Adrian, but would become him. The details remained frustratingly vague, like trying to remember a dream upon waking. But the emotion was crystal clear. Love, not romantic, but cosmic. The kind of love that sees another being suffering and can't help but respond. On the 6th day, Elena woke at 3 a.m, with a clarity that felt like a bell being struck in the center of her chest. She knew, with absolute certainty, that she couldn't run from this. Whatever was unfolding between her and Adrian, whether it was shared delusion or genuine spiritual connection, she needed to see it through. The cost of walking away would be greater than the risk of moving forward. She waited until a reasonable hour, then pulled out the slip of paper and dialed the number Adrian had written below the motel's address. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "Elena, how did you know it was me? I've been waiting for you to call." No accusation in his voice, no impatience, just simple fact. "Can we meet somewhere?" Eleanor asked. "Somewhere quiet. I want to try to understand this." "Yes," Adrian said immediately. "There's a place I've been going, up past Soldier Pass. It's off the main trails, quiet. Can you meet me there this afternoon?" Elena agreed, and Adrian gave her detailed directions to a spot accessible by a little-known trail that branched off the main route. She spent the rest of the morning in a state of nervous anticipation, unable to focus on anything, changing her clothes 3 times before settling on practical hiking gear and her sturdy boots. The drive to the trailhead took 20 minutes, and the hike another 45, following Adrian's directions through a landscape of red rock and juniper, the October sun warm on her shoulders despite the cool air. She found him sitting on a flat boulder overlooking a small canyon, a natural amphitheater of stone that seemed to capture and hold the light in unusual ways. "This is beautiful," Elena said as she approached, slightly out of breath from the climb. "I stumbled on it my second day here," Adrian said, standing to greet her but maintaining a respectful distance. "Something about this place feels right. Safe." He gestured to the rock beside him, large enough for both of them to sit comfortably. "Thank you for coming." Elena settled onto the stone, grateful for the solid presence beneath her. For a few minutes, they sat in silence, watching the play of light and shadow across the canyon walls, listening to the wind move through the trees. "I've been having dreams," Elena said finally, "about darkness and light, about making a choice that mattered more than I understood at the time." Adrian nodded slowly. "I've had similar dreams for years, but since meeting you, they've become more vivid, more specific." "Tell me what you see," Elena said, "in your dreams. Tell me everything." Adrian took a breath, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "I see myself in a place between places, not alive, but not yet dead, or maybe the other way around. I'm lost, Elena, completely, utterly lost. And I'm afraid in a way I've never been afraid in this life. It's the fear of total annihilation, of ceasing to exist in any meaningful way." His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the echo of that ancient fear beneath it. She found herself reaching for his hand without thinking, and when their fingers intertwined, the gesture felt as natural as breathing. "And then I see light," Adrian continued. "Just a small point at first, like a star in an endless void. But it's enough. It gives me something to move toward, something to hold on to. And as I get closer, I realize the light is a person, is you, though you don't look exactly as you do now. Different face, different time, but the same essence, the same soul." "What do I do?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You offer me a choice," Adrian said. "You tell me I can let go, cease struggling, and find peace in dissolution. Or I can hold on, carry the memory of kindness through darkness, and find my way back to life. You make it clear that either choice is acceptable, that there's no judgment in it. But the way you offer it, the compassion in it, makes me want to live, makes me want to carry that light forward." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, though she couldn't have said why. And then I wake up. But the memory of that choice stays with me, along with the knowledge that I owe you something for it, that your kindness created a debt that needs to be honored." Adrian turned to look at her, his amber eyes bright with unshed tears of his own. "Elena, I don't know if this is literally real, if we actually knew each other in some past life, or if it's something more metaphorical, some kind of soul recognition that our conscious minds are trying to make sense of. But what I do know is that meeting you feels like coming home after a long exile, and I can't ignore that. I won't." Elena squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, feeling that familiar golden sensation spreading through her chest. "I don't know what I believe," she admitted. "Part of me thinks this is crazy, that we're two lonely people creating a story to give meaning to a random encounter. But another part of me, a deeper part, knows that what you're saying is true, that we've been connected for a very long time, and that we're supposed to be finding our way back to each other now. So what do we do?" Adrian asked. How do we navigate this?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, watching a red-tailed hawk circle lazily in the thermal currents above the canyon. "I think we stop fighting it," she said finally. "I think we allow ourselves to remember, to feel, to follow wherever this leads. And we trust that even if we don't understand the mechanism, we can honor the truth of what's happening between us." "That sounds like a good plan," Adrian said. And for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face and made him look years younger. "Though I have to admit, I have no idea what I'm doing. This isn't exactly covered in any guidebook." Elena laughed, surprised by the sound. "No, I don't suppose How to Repay a Karmic Debt for Dummies is a bestseller." They sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, their current lives, their pasts, the strange synchronicities that had brought them both to Sedona at this precise moment in time. Adrian told her about growing up in Montana, about the constant sense of searching for something he couldn't name, about the way he'd drifted through jobs and relationships without ever feeling fully present. Elena talked about her marriage, about how she'd married Marcus because it seemed like the right thing to do, the expected progression, but had never felt the kind of soul-deep connection she'd always secretly longed for. I used to think I was broken, Elena confessed as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the rocks in shades of crimson and gold. Like everyone else could feel things deeply, and I was just going through the motions. But now I wonder if maybe I was just waiting, if some part of me knew there was something, someone I needed to find first. I know exactly what you mean, Adrian said quietly. I've never been able to fully commit to anything or anyone, because there was always this sense of incompleteness, like I was missing a crucial piece of myself. And now what? Now I'm terrified, Adrian admitted, because I've found the missing piece, but I have no idea how to integrate it into my life. What if I mess this up? What if the debt I owe you isn't something I'm capable of repaying? Elena turned to face him, and in the golden light of late afternoon, she saw not just the man beside her, but something more. A long line of connection stretching back through time. Moments of meeting and parting and meeting again, a story that was still being written. I don't think the debt is a burden, Adrian. I think it's a gift. It brought you to me. It brought us to this moment. And maybe the repayment isn't a single act, but a continuous choice. To be present, to be open, to be willing to see where this goes. Is that what you want? Adrian asked, hope and vulnerability warring in his expression. To see where this goes? Yes, Eleanor said, and the certainty in her voice surprised her. I want that very much. As they made their way back down the trail in the gathering dusk, Elena felt something shift inside her, not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet settling, like a bone that had been slightly out of place finally clicking back into alignment. The path ahead was still uncertain, still frightening in its implications, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt fully, completely alive. That night, when Elena drove Adrian back to his motel, neither of them wanted to say goodbye. They sat in the parking lot for an hour, talking through the windshield's reflection of streetlights, until finally Adrian leaned over and kissed her, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, with the weight of recognition and promise, and something that felt like coming home. I'll see you tomorrow, Elena said when they finally pulled apart, both of them slightly breathless. Tomorrow, Adrian agreed. And the day after that, and the day after that, for as long as you'll have me. Eleanor drove home, with the taste of him still on her lips, and that warm, golden light blazing in her chest, so bright, she wondered if she might actually be glowing. And when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed again of darkness and light, but this time she wasn't alone in it. This time, Adrian was there beside her, holding her hand as they walked together through the void, towards something that looked like dawn. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Elena had experienced before. She and Adrian fell into a rhythm that felt both brand new and ancient, as though they were rediscovering a dance they'd once known by heart. They spent their days hiking the trails around Sedona, Cathedral Rock at sunrise, West Fork when the aspens were at their peak, the secret places Adrian had discovered in his weeks of wandering. They talked for hours, sharing the stories of their current lives, while also allowing space for the strange memories and impressions that continued to surface. But more than the conversations or the physical connection that deepened between them, it was the quality of presence that transformed Elena's world. For the first time she could remember, she felt seen, not just observed or appreciated, but truly witnessed in all her complexity, her contradictions, her light and shadow both. And when she looked at Adrian, she had the sense of seeing not just the man before her, but the soul beneath, the eternal essence that had carried a debt through darkness and death to find its way back to her. 3 weeks after their conversation in the canyon, Elena woke in Adrian's arms, in the small apartment she'd come to think of as too small for one person, but perfect for two. November had arrived, bringing cooler nights and the first whisper of winter in the air. Through the window, she could see the red rocks emerging from shadow as dawn broke, the light hitting them in stages, first the tallest peaks, then the middle heights, finally the canyon floors. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked, his voice rough with sleep. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder, and Elena pressed closer to his warmth. "Light," she said, "how it returns every morning, reliable as breath. How even in the darkest night, dawn is always coming." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think I'm beginning to understand what the debt means, what it's always meant." Elena shifted to look at him, studying his face in the dim light. "Tell me, the light you gave me, whenever it was, however it happened, it wasn't alone. It was a gift freely offered, but I've been carrying it as a debt all this time because I didn't understand that the way to honor a gift isn't to repay it, but to pass it forward, to become a source of light for others, the way you were for me." He cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "But there's something I've been avoiding, something I need to tell you." Elena's heart stuttered. "What?" "The dreams have been showing me more lately. I think the reason you were able to offer me light in that between place was because you chose darkness for yourself. You gave me what you needed, Elena. You sacrificed your own light to save someone you didn't even know." The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through Elena's consciousness. Suddenly she was there again, not remembering so much as experiencing, standing in the void with a choice of her own. She could walk toward the light, toward peace and rest and the end of struggling. Or she could stay, could offer that light to the lost soul she'd encountered, could bear the darkness a little longer to give someone else a chance at life. "I chose to stay," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I chose to give the light away because I couldn't bear to watch you dissolve into nothing, because your fear was so profound that I couldn't just walk away from it. And in doing so, you bound us together," Adrian said, his own tears falling now. "Your sacrifice created a connection that couldn't be broken. It echoed through lifetimes, pulling us back together so I could finally understand what you did for me, so I could finally be worthy of it." "You were always worthy," Elena said fiercely. "That's what I understood in that moment, that every soul is worthy of light, of kindness, of a chance to choose life over dissolution. There was no debt, Adrian, there never was. But there was a promise," Adrian said. "Even if we didn't speak it, even if we didn't consciously understand it, a promise that we would find each other again, that we would complete the circle, that the darkness you carried for me would eventually be transformed back into light." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "And that's what you've given me, Elena. Not just the memory of ancient kindness, but the reality of present love. You've taught me how to be fully alive, how to be present, how to honor the gift you gave me by living with purpose and compassion." Elena felt something release inside her, a tension she hadn't known she'd been carrying, a knot that had finally been untangled. "So what now?" she asked. "If the debt is paid, if the light is returned, what happens next?" Adrian smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Now we get to choose. Not because of destiny or karma or cosmic debt, but because we want to. We get to decide every single day to be together, to love each other, to build a life that honors both the ancient connection we share and the immediate, human, messy reality of two people learning to navigate the world together." "I choose you," Elena said without hesitation. "I choose us. I choose all of it, the mystery and the certainty, the past and the future, the spiritual and the mundane. I choose to believe that souls can find each other across impossible distances, and I choose to believe that what we have is worth every moment of darkness it took to get here." "Then we're agreed," Adrian said. "No more debt, no more owing, just two people who found each other against all odds and decided to make a life together." They made love then, slow and intentional, and Elena felt the last barriers between them dissolve. This wasn't just physical connection or spiritual recognition. It was integration, the merging of two souls who had been circling each other through lifetimes, finally allowing themselves to become one without losing their individual essences. Later, As they sat on Elena's small balcony, watching the morning light transform the rocks from shadow to flame, Adrian said, "I want to stay in Sedona. Put down roots. I've been running for so long, and I'm tired. I want to build something real with you." "I want that too," Elena said, "but I have a condition." "What's that?" "You have to let me photograph you. The real you, not some posed version. I want to capture what I see when I look at you. The light you carry, the soul beneath the surface. Will you let me do that?" Adrian considered this, then nodded. "On one condition of my own. You have to let me read the poetry you've been writing late at night when you think I'm asleep. The words you've been trying to capture what's happening between us." Elena blushed. Caught. She'd started writing again, not journal entries, but actual poetry, attempting to put language to the ineffable experience of remembering and being remembered, of carrying ancient connection into present form. "Deal," she said. Over the following months, as autumn turned to winter and winter to spring, Elena and Adrian built the life they'd promised each other. Adrian found work as a guide for one of Sedona's wilderness tour companies, taking tourists into the backcountry and teaching them to see the landscape as sacred space. Elena's photography shifted, becoming less about technical perfection and more about capturing genuine moments of connection between people and landscape, between present and past, between the human and the divine. She photographed Adrian constantly, building a portfolio that became a meditation on light and recognition, on the way souls manifest in physical form. The series caught the attention of a gallery in Tlaquepaque, and they offered her a show, her first solo exhibition. On opening night, surrounded by images of the man she loved and the landscape that had brought them together, Elena felt a completion that had nothing to do with external validation and everything to do with finally being able to share her vision with the world. But it was a smaller, more private moment that brought everything full circle. 6 months after their first conversation in the canyon, Adrian took Elena back to that same spot at sunset. They climbed the trail in companionable silence, both of them acutely aware that this place had witnessed their first real attempt to understand what was unfolding between them. At the flat boulder overlooking the canyon, Adrian pulled out a small leather journal, the one Elena had seen him writing in occasionally but never asked about. "I want to read you something," he said. "I've been trying to put words to this for months, and I finally got it right." Elena settled beside him, the familiar warmth of his presence, a comfort that had become as necessary as breathing. The sun was setting behind them, casting long shadows across the red rock and painting the sky in impossible shades of orange and purple. Adrian opened the journal and read, "In a life I don't remember, you offered light to a stranger, not because you had to, not because I deserved it, but because that's who you are. Someone who sees darkness and cannot help but respond. I carried that light through death, through forgetting and return, through all the years of searching for a face I couldn't name and a debt I couldn't quantify. But this is what I've learned. Love isn't a debt to be repaid. It's a fire that keeps burning, passed from hand to hand through the long night of existence, growing brighter with each exchange. You gave me light once, and I've spent lifetimes trying to return it to you. But now I understand. The light was never mine to give. It was always yours. You just taught me how to see it in myself and in the world. So this is my promise. I will carry your kindness forward. I will be light for others the way you were for me. I will love you in this life with the gratitude of all the lives before. And I will build a future with you that honors the past we're only beginning to remember. The debt is paid. The circle is closed. And still, we choose each other. Not from obligation, but from the fierce joy of two souls who found their way home." Elena was crying by the time he finished, and when Adrian looked up from the page, his own eyes were wet. "I love you," he said simply, "not because of what you did for me in some other existence, but because of who you are in this one. Because you stopped on a mountain road when you didn't have to. Because you've been brave enough to follow wherever this strange connection led us. Because you've made me believe in magic and meaning and the kind of love that transcends understanding. I love you too, Elena managed, her voice breaking. And I think the light was always meant to be shared. I think that's what the universe has been trying to teach us, that we're not separate souls keeping cosmic accounts, but parts of a larger whole, constantly giving and receiving light in an endless exchange that connects us all. As the sun finally set, and the first stars emerged in the darkening sky, they sat together in silence, two people who had found their way back to each other against impossible odds. The debt had been paid, the light returned, the circle closed. But the story wasn't over. It was just beginning, written in the daily choice to be present, to be kind, to honor the sacred connection they'd rediscovered. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, in that liminal space where souls recognize each other and ancient promises are kept, the universe smiled, because two of its children had finally learned what light is truly for, not to be hoarded or repaid, but to be shared freely, passing from hand to hand like a flame that never diminishes but only grows brighter with each exchange. Below them, Sedona settled into night, the red rocks fading to shadow. But Elena and Adrian remained on their boulder overlook, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars emerge one by one. They didn't need to speak. Everything that needed to be said had been said, in Adrian's poetry, in Elena's photographs, in the quiet moments of daily life they'd built together. The light had returned, not as a debt repaid, but as a gift renewed. And in the warmth of that eternal exchange, two souls finally found the peace they'd been seeking across lifetimes of